This is a fallout shelter. This is the world is ending type deal. Have you ever heard of this book called 1984? I like this book. I think it's very informative if you know how to read it and you take the right lessons away from it. One of the things that I find most interesting about the book, and one of the least discussed things, for example, when people talk about 1984, they always talk about surveillance or like authoritarianism. I guess authoritarianism in the abstract is a fine thing to talk about, but surveillance, like as if that was the point, you know? There's a lot of psychology to the book that I think is broadly applicable, and you know, a lot of linguistic theory that Tom Scott recently disagreed with, but I think that his interpretation of the book's argument was a little bit narrow in my personal opinion. You know, one of the things that I find most interesting about the book is the psychology and the philosophy behind the members of the inner circle of the party, who seem to be okay with making life worse for everyone as long as the relative power they have over the people beneath them is increased. They support the development of a social order that makes their life worse in an absolute sense, but it makes other people's life more worse. Now, we see stuff like this all the time. A great example of it is that in US politics, literally throughout history, hundreds of millions of whites have been convinced to vote against their own material interests because it would also benefit like Mexicans or Chinese people or whatever, you know? You have a lot of people who have been convinced to be anti-union and anti-worker rights because they've been told that it would also benefit other undesirables. So they would rather maintain a system where even if they're worse off, their relative level of power over the racial underclass is higher. You saw this with the Confederacy as well. I mean, Jesus Christ, the Confederacy literally seceded and then declared war on the Union because they would rather be in a poorer, less developed, less internationally recognized, less workable nation at war, as long as they got to keep their slaves, than they would be in a society where they would not have all of those downsides, but black people would have at least some modicum of rights. So, you know, we see a lot of this. And I think one of the clearest examples of it is in how wealthy people are treating the climate crisis. Mark Zuckerberg is building a, sources vary, 100 million, 200 million, whatever, bunker in Hawaii, a mega compound, one of the most, you know, aggressive and expensive, you know, residential developments in history, you know? We're talking like palatial shit, okay? We're doing some Versailles shit, except secret underground bunker, you know? This isn't about signaling wealth and class and prestige to other people. This is a fallout shelter, okay? This is a goddamn, you know, the world is ending type deal. And a bunch of tree houses because Zuck, like a lot of other people in his position, is a man-child, you know. Off the 2-lane highway that winds along the northeast side of the Hawaiian island of Kauai, on a quiet stretch of ranchland between the tourist hubs of Kapa and Hanalei, an enormous, secret construction project is underway. 6-foot walls block the view from a nearby road fronting the project, where cars slow to try to catch a glimpse of what's behind it. Security guards stand watch at an entrance gate and patrol the surrounding beaches on ATVs. Pickup trucks roll in and out, hauling building materials and transporting hundreds of workers. No one working on this project is allowed to talk about what they're building. Almost anyone who passes compound security, from carpenters to electricians to painters to security guards, is bound by a strict NDA. Cool. So that's pretty weird, right? I mean, like, historically, when ultra-wealthy and powerful people would build mega palaces, it wasn't like a secret out-of-the-way bunker. You know, they would build them in plain view because the entire point was to signal wealth and prestige. It was a class indicator, you know? For there to be this shift where it's like, no, okay? This is my, like, fortress, basically. I think this is just probably, like, the largest and maybe the loudest example of something that's been getting more popular in recent years, which is selling the apocalypse to the wealthy. We went over that like mega semi-military truck before, the one where that suburban mom was like, and here's the smoke screen button, remember? And it's, oh, it's bulletproof. The Cybertruck is marketed in part for It's the fact that it's bulletproof, in spite of the fact that apparently the suspension can't get that thing over a shallow dip or a small rock. Um, so there's that, you know. There more and more like wealthy tech at varying price ranges. You know, Cybertrucks aren't, you know, $100 million. This bunker is being sold as like an apocalypse fantasy to the wealthy. The wealthy aren't concerned with what they can do to stop climate change, even though they could. They're concerned with what they can do to survive it, because they would rather live in a world where they were among the chosen few wealthy enough to survive everything falling apart than a world where everyone is materially better off. It does not improve the lives of the ultra wealthy for society to collapse. The world that they fear is one where they will be worse off, you know? Like, they don't benefit from this, but they do benefit relative to you and me, right? Like, the wealth of a modern billionaire is entirely predicated on statehood. Currency is only valuable if it's backed by the esteem and prestige and, you know, trust in the US government or whatever other organization you're, you know, working with here. Uh, Nothing here post climate change collapse, the thing they fear, would benefit them, but still, they persist. It's like Fight Club. We don't talk about Fight Club, says David, one former contract employee. That's not weird. 5,000 square foot underground shelter, its own energy and food supplies, and when coupled with land purchase prices, cost in excess of $270 million. $250 million. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. According to evidence reviewed by Wired, the project has relied on legal maneuvering and political networking, and at times sources believe it has shown disregard for the local public. Really? It's like how they got the secret contractors to build the meth lab in Breaking Bad. You mean in Better Call Saul? Yeah. This is Mark's theory. The class above will fuck over the working class to the degree where the working class can't work for them anymore. Yeah, literally. Like, it is in their best interest to, like, Zuckerberg is, right now, as powerful as he can ever be without just being a warlord or the leader of a state, you know? He can't, there's no up from here. He's already one of the wealthiest people in human history. So, in all likelihood, things falling apart would be of massive detriment to him. All the wealth in the world can't bring you clean water when all of the engineers and electricians who would wire a desalination plant are dead. You know, it doesn't, society doesn't work that way. Hey, by the way, this is exactly what Elon Musk has been selling for a long time. His dream of going to Mars has always been like an ultra wealthy person's yacht out of Earth. He's always sold it that way, you know? Like, he's never sold Mars as like a scientific expedition. It's always been so he can be the king of Mars. It's not going to happen, of course, even if the technology, you know, was permissive of that sort of thing. Any Mars colony at this point in our technological development would die out long before they could get resupplied. It's too big of a hurdle, you know? So I'm not worried about him actually fulfilling that promise. But I do think that Elon Musk, you know, more than anything else, wants to take a group of his most loyal yes men and sycophants to a private island so far away that it's not even on Earth, and just like live as a king and eat grapes while reclining in a chair and children all day, you know? I think that's what he wants more than anything else. I think that's what most billionaires want, you know? I think the more powerful and distanced you get, the more disregard you show for the people beneath you, the more contemptible and sociopathic you become, and the more, you know, the more you're like ultimate. It's like Rome shit, you know what I mean? The more powerful a person gets, the more they want to be like reclining on an elegantly carved bench while child slaves feed them grapes. That just seems to be what the ultra powerful all gravitate towards doing. It's why there shouldn't be any billionaires. You know that they say every billionaire is a policy failure. It's not good for their mental health either. Are billionaires doing well? Elon Musk is constantly miserable and he's a ketamine addict. $250 million is being spent by Mark Zuckerberg to build his Hawaii fortress, you know? As if, and by the way, I want to be clear, okay? If the world ever really does fall to shit, Mark Zuckerberg cannot hire enough security guards to keep the desperate, hungry, thirsty proletariat from storming his fortress and tearing him limb from limb. There is no amount of financial walling off that can prevent him or anyone from the looting if the looting starts. It's not possible. It has never happened before in human history. When things collapse, everyone goes down. You either run or everyone goes down. You know, there is no like, let's wait it out in the vault. You know, Vosh, this is a leftist fantasy. Yes, he can. Nope. Supply lines break down really quickly and really easily. You know how expensive maintaining a gigantic $250 million fortress is? All the expertise, all the resources, stuff breaks down, it weathers away. We're talking about a climate crisis here, you know? Assuming he has his internal energy, how much fuel does he need? How much does he keep? What about food? Does he have enough space in his estate to continue to farm out enough food for him and all the security guards around him? Like, how many security guards would he have? 100, 300, 1,000? How much food is that? Does he have enough space agriculturally to sustain all those people? No. Well, then he needs space outside of it, i.e., he now has a castle surrounded by farms. What did we do to castles, lads? If you can't break a castle, what do? You siege it. They burn the crops or take it all for themselves. So you build a wall around the farms. And how many guards do you need to guard those walls, huh? It just doesn't work. No man is an island. You can't do it. It has never worked in all of human history. Nobody has ever been able to maintain this like survivalist pocket of stability in a regionally destroyed, like it doesn't happen. The closest you can get really are like, I don't know. There are like monasteries and missions and temples like on top of mountains where people have occupied the surrounding area and determined that it wasn't worthwhile like going after them. But usually after a few years, a deal is made where food continues to be brought up and they get like assimilated anyway. That's what happened with the Vatican and Mussolini, right? Mussolini held the territory around Vatican City and like that stalemate continued for years until eventually a deal was worked out because Vatican City cannot on its own exist, you know? They don't have farms in the Vatican City, you know? Yeah, it's just dumb. Even those places rely heavily on trade or donations. Yeah, there is like one of the biggest examples I see of this insane delusional fantasy is this. The yachts. The like the like ultra wealthy like we're going to build a yacht and sail around the world as the oceans rise or whatever. As if yachts aren't the most difficult to maintain, expensive. You have to bring them into a dock. You have to clean. How do you maintain a yacht without a dry dock? Are you just like preparing the dry dock? Like what are you talking about? There is no way to separate yourself from society unless you're willing to build a state around it. They have a crew. What crew allows them to repair a yacht that's still in the ocean? You can't repair a yacht when it's, well, you can repair the top of the yacht. You need a proper dock. Submarine would make more sense. Nope, submarines also need maintenance. There is no individual unit of, there is no building or vessel. There is nothing. It doesn't matter how much money you have. There is nothing that will keep you safe when things get desperate. Nothing, okay? Absolutely nothing. The only thing you can do to defend yourself is to build a state. That's it. Because you need an enormous number of people with the farming and the specialized expertise and the so on and so forth. You need to build a state. If your post-apocalypse survival plan is just to reconstruct a state where you're the one in charge, why not just save the one we have? That would be a lot easier. Like, if your end game here is, what if after a tremendous amount of suffering, we throw it all in on a gamble that we might end up in a ruling position in a situation where at best the conditions are worse than what we have today? Why not just improve things now? And the answer, of course, is because the wealthy are contemptible. They're evil. They don't think you're people. They don't care about you. They're not interested in your suffering or your plight. They only care about maintaining their relative power over you. This tendency is demonstrable both in the wealthy today and in rulers throughout all of human history. Read history. Read the decision-making of very powerful people. Any group of people, from divine monarchs to regular monarchs to pharaohs to czars to kings to queens. Read out all of them. Time and time and time and time and time and time again. Absurd, obscene, irrational decision-making because they think they're better than you. That's it. That's it. That's it. Every time, you know? I hate the myth that because people have gotten their wealth meritocratically, that means that their decision making vis-a-vis class interest is somehow rational. Their class interest pertains to the accumulation of capital. It's not the same thing as just being rational. Wealthy people are, and always have been, as irrational as poor people. They make the same stupid decisions. They are as or more likely to abuse drugs, to fuck up their personal life, to make ridiculous ego decisions. The only difference is they got lucky, they might have had a skill they could have capitalized on more effectively, and their wealth insulates them from the consequences of their mistakes. Mark Zuckerberg can go on a drug bender and not show up to work for a week. He'll be fine. You go on a drug bender, you don't show up to work for a week, and you're out in your ass, you're homeless, okay? They're not better than us. In fact, they're significantly worse than us. Vosh, the climate crisis is cringe, but imagining rich folks going into Paradise Lost gives me the shivers. There is no way to like store food for that long, unless their plan going forward is like canned beans until they die of natural, like, well, you know, they need farms, they need a society. You need a society to keep. That's the only way that anyone has ever been safe. By the way, you know, warlords, martial experts, commanders, and generals have all been killed in their 30s and 40s by underlings, by jealous lovers, by diphtheria, whatever else, you know? The only way to reliably keep people safe, wealthy or poor, is to build a society. It's like inventing the universe before making an apple pie. That's the only way to do it. That's the only way. Vosh, why don't we see incredibly controversial rich people get assassinated more often like we used to? Because it used to be that when you assassinated a wealthy person, you could then take their shit. Nowadays, people's wealth is abstract. It's held up in legal contracts and, you know, like digital money. There's no longer a direct relationship. You can't plunder the wealthy anymore, so it's not really possible to. I mean, you can plunder the wealthy, but it's not like viable in the way that it used to be. So there's not much of an incentive, even in countries that are a lot less, you know, a lot less safe, right? Even in like war-torn regions of Africa. You know, you can kill a warlord or whatever, but you don't just get to be the next warlord. Like the previous warlord had a bunch of international connections from financiers, people giving them money. You can't just take that place. You can do a coup, but that's not you on your own acting. At that point, you're just trying to lead the new government. I don't know, the wealth was kind of abstract before. Not really. Wealth literally used to be like how much treasure you had. If you killed a lord and they had a bunch of treasure in their vault, that was, and you had enough dudes on your team that you could guard that treasure, that was literally just your treasure now, you know? I understand, I'm simplifying it somewhat, but for the most part, the transmittability of wealth was a lot easier back, you know, before the, you know, digital currency in the modern stock market. So it's, you know, the incentive structures have changed these days. That wasn't the motivation of every assassin ever. Well, no, but it's a pretty big one, right? I mean, assassins generally have to be paid pretty well to do what they do, but also there's not really any way to kill powerful people and get away with it anymore. Like with the modern surveillance state, it's just, it's a mugs game, frankly. And by the way, it's not like it does anything good. Again, look throughout history. Has the assassination of wealthy and powerful people actually ever improved things for the working class? No, not really. That's not actually a good strategy, you know? That doesn't generally like lead to any improvement, you know? And that's of course because a lot of these problems are caused by underlying structural elements that need to be addressed in a systemic way. It's not just like one big evil dude at the top of everything is the issue. French Revolution? Yeah, that's true. Things worked out well after that. Shinzo Abe? The funny thing is, the Shinzo Abe example actually is one of the best counterexamples. Like, the Shinzo Abe assassination was so unique. Like, genuinely, like, throughout most of history, there aren't many examples of it working out that way. The Shinzo Abe example is pretty unique, you know? Truly the exception. Yeah, for sure. True, but if you just wanted money, Sapcat, they usually had some treasure on them that you could just run off with and run to a different, like, you know, a kingdom and just, you know, just go run to, like, the Arab world or whatever and be, you know, in wealth for the rest of your life. I think there are actually a lot of examples of unpopular despots being assassinated and replaced with more popular despots in feudal societies. Yeah, but it didn't usually change the underlying, like, social issues, right? Popularity isn't always necessarily indicative of, like, how well these problems were actually addressed. It's just not a good, stable way of fixing problems, is all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I guess I'm more surprised that we don't see many martyrs, given how frustrated people seem to be. There are complicated social reasons for this, I think. Pigeon's been on my lap for, like, an hour now. Okay, now how do I get back? It's pretty tough to roll. I have to use one foot. Okay, I'll use both feet. All right. Pull. No. No, she's getting up. Pigeon, no. I'm not deterring you. No. Ah, well. She was there for a while.